All right, so I want to talk for a minute about the political landscape that's out there and kind of where we can fit. Now, as we look at this, we hear a lot of terms: left, right, conservative, libertarian, blah, blah, blah. Well, where do you fit in all of this? Well, here is the way that I think of it, and I think it's extremely useful for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, it answers the fundamental questions that we all need to ask. And there's two of them. One is, how should things be? How should the world be around us? And then two is, what role should the state play in that, in bringing that about? Okay. Also, this model that I'm going to show you is very powerful at predicting where things are in relation to each other, who likes who doesn't, all that kind of good stuff. So let's talk for a minute about these two axes. The first one is the horizontal axis, which talks about ethics, okay, or kind of the way you think things should be. Now, people that are more progressive, they're more into novel ethics, newer ideas and progress, right? That's kind of the left-leaning view. Conservatives on an ethical level are people who have a philosophy based more in tradition, okay? And depending on the culture that you're in, we're going to be focused on the United States. That can vary. Some cultures, they're traditional. I wouldn't be a traditionalist in some cultures, right? I think their traditions are very bad. But that's kind of the way that we usually think of it when people talk about left and right, progressive or conservative in sort of an ethical sense. Now, the next axis is politics. So this answers the question, okay, well, how do you think the world should be? Maybe you're really, against the traditional view, but, you don't necessarily think the state should be the one imposing these ideas on the world. Whereas, and so that's more libertarian, right? Liberty, the idea of the state shouldn't have a lot of power. It shouldn't be doing a lot. People should be kind of left alone. On the other hand, as you get higher up the authoritarian side, you get closer to where you want the state to intervene and you want to utilize the state to bring about your vision of the way the world should be. You believe that the state is a tool for that, and you're very apt to or open to using it to make that happen. You don't have a lot of qualms with that. So that's kind of the landscape. Now, let's just talk about that, how that would work. So let's say that do I believe that sex before marriage is wrong? If you say yes in the United States, you're probably on the traditional side of this scale. You're probably pretty far over too in today's culture. So I'd probably put you about here. But the question is, all right, do you want the government to enforce that? Do you want them locking up people who are not? Now, me personally, no, I don't think the state should do anything to people who have sex before marriage. That's crazy. I don't think we should have laws against it. So I'm going to be on this side of the scale on that particular issue. And if we take that every single issue that I have, I can kind of figure out where I normally lie on the political scale. On the other hand, if you had someone who's like, yeah, it's wrong and we should lock people up, you probably would be an Islamist or something, a radical Islamic terrorist who believes that people who have sex before marriage should be stoned to death. So by the state, by those in authority. So that is sort of your political compass. Now let's take a look at some of the predictive power of some of this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up this view that we have here of sort of this landscape. Now, you'll notice something. Over here we have Islamists who are highly traditional in their ethics and highly authoritarian. On this side, we have kind of, your anarcho-communists who believe in anarchy, or hippies, I think is a good one. And you'll notice they're on the opposite ends. Let's talk about that for a second. Hippies and Islamists probably are about as far from each other as you can possibly get, okay? And so that's a good way to look, is how many of these, you're not only are you on different sides of the political axes, where you believe in a ton of authority and making people do things, but you're also on different sides of the ethical one, which is the one actually a lot of people care about. And the thing is people care about things differently. People may not care so much about people's ethics, they care about their politics. Other people may not care so much about your politics, they care more about, are you on the left side when it comes to your ethics, or are you over here on the right side? Now, with that in mind, this helps explain some of the stuff that we're seeing. So I'm putting the blue circle is the Democrat Party. The people that are in the Democrat Party tend to fall in this side of the spectrum. The people in the right side of the spectrum tend to be more conservative. Now you'll notice, the Republican Party. So you'll notice that here, like, let's take a look at the political landscape right now. Donald Trump is the center of the universe. And what you find is that he is appealing to, now you'll notice Joe Biden is on the other side of Donald Trump and kind of where the populist conservatives are, okay? Traditional conservatives feel closer to Trump than they do to somebody like Joe Biden. Rand Paul and kind of the classical liberals, Dave Rubin, and there's some others that are more on the left, maybe a Tim Pool, who recently said he would vote for Donald Trump. He felt, you'll notice, he's in this kind of classical liberal area where they're high on political freedom, but they're a little bit more progressive in their personal ethics and morality and stuff. So these types of people there's kind of a battle for them where they kind of are looking at their distance. Am I closer to Joe Biden or am I closer to Donald Trump? And a lot of them are actually moving over into the Republican side. This is kind of the walk away movement, is a lot of that going on here. On the other side of the spectrum, right at this area, you have the neoconservatives. These are the George Bush type, the McCains, the Jeff Flakes. These types of conservatives tend to be kind of your... they're a little bit more on authority. They're a little bit more okay with the state doing stuff. For instance, they were voted the Iraq War. Libertarians tend to be very against war. They tend to be, they voted for the Patriot Act. They have their thing. So they're a little more on the authority side of the scale. And they're also, they're not hardcore like religious conservative types necessarily. And so what happens is with kind of the neocons, like, McCain and them, they are looking at this going, am I closer to Donald Trump or am I closer to Joe Biden? And they're really torn. So again, that's another battleground area. Another battleground right here with the Union Democrats. Joe Manchin and, is kind of a representation of that. That's why all the battleground states are in these areas where there's kind of the old school Union Democrats. These people are a little bit more, they're not they're not socialists like Bernie Sanders and AOC and all them, but they are, and they're a little bit more traditional in their values. They're not conservative, but they're not like hardcore hippie types or something. And they kind of feel the pull from Donald Trump here. So Donald Trump kind of finds himself in the middle. But as you look at this, what we can see here is the political battle is trying to move these blue and red bubbles, right? They're trying to adjust them. So maybe I shift the Republicans shift this way to try and get, be more authoritarian, appeal to the George Bush type people, but then they lose the libertarian types like Rand Paul because they're being too much, Rand Paul and those classical liberals hate the George Bush types because they're on the exact opposite side of the spectrum on two axes. On the other side, but Trump kind of moved things more this direction where he appealed more to them. So how we shift these different blue and red bubbles, that's the game of politics. It's sort of this game of trying to win the crowd, put together coalitions. On the other side of this is trying to actually move people. And that's the cultural and ideological battle that's happening all the time, is how do you get more populists, or how do you get the Union Democrats to move this direction? The ideology that people have, whether political or ethical, that's the game. That discussion on political philosophy and ethical philosophy and the way that you propagandize it and the way that you put it out there is what moves these people around into these different kind of areas of the map. So culture ultimately is the idea of moving people around on this map. And it is really what determines politics, because politics is trying to react to where people are to represent their interests. So anyway, I just wanted to put this out there as a video that kind of breaks down the way to look at the political landscape to see where you fit. and to see just kind of who's where. And I think this model does a very good job of showing, who hates who. Socialists hate Bernie Sanders. The neoconservatives hate Rand Paul, and Rand Paul and all those classical liberals hate George Bush types. And then you have, Joe Biden and Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. They all hate each other. And obviously the religious conservatives like Rick Santorum, they can't stand those hippies, right? And they're free love and all that kind of crap. So anyway, this just gives a good outline of who hates who, who's closer to who, and how the politics kind of lay out. And if you understand your own political philosophy, the role of government, as well as your own ethical philosophy, it's very clear what is right and what is wrong, then you can figure out where you fit on this more accurately. And if you come up all over the place, like you just don't know, on one issue you're with the Democrats and the other with the Republicans, you're jumping all other, you're either in the middle or you just have a very jumbled understanding of your political philosophy and your ethical philosophy. And I think a better understanding of both politics and ethics and morality, kind of the way you think things should be, and politically what you believe about how it should be implemented, that's where that discussion can happen. And the more you understand it, the better you will be able to know where you fit in the political landscape. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this.